Assalamu alaikum, everyone. This is Amar bin Salim. Welcome to the fifth episode of my podcast series, Out Loud with Amar. As you know, every time we try to come up with content that actually adds value to your lives, uh, things that we could add value to the overall economy, to the society. We like to discuss things that have an impact on the overall society and also discuss those things which require more discussion. Today, again, is one of those topics that warrants more discussion. So the title of today's program is pretty much in sync with UN Women's theme this year, which is gender equality today for a sustainable tomorrow. And I think it's very easy to connect the dots because in order for an economy to thrive and capitalize on its people, we need to make sure that we have involvement, we have people actively taking part in all the economic and all the other activities to make sure that the economy is blossoming. But right now, the problem over here in Pakistan, and I'm sure in many other developing countries and some of the developed countries as well, would be that you see that half of the population, a certain segment is participating, but another segment is not, or is not being allowed to, is not being afforded that opportunity to contribute. So we're going to talk about the involvement of women. We are also going to talk about how women are being given their, the proper rights and again provided the opportunities to contribute to the overall economy and the elevation of the society. Just a couple of facts trotting out. Women are 49% of the total population of Pakistan. So previously the figure used to be 51%, but now it has dropped down to 49%. 22% of that 49% figure is part of labor force. 18% of them get paid. Women hold only 5% of the leadership positions in Pakistan, and are 20% of the members of the parliament are women. So where we say that 49%, or let's say half the population of the country is women, uh, their representation in the parliament, their representation in the legislative assembly is only 20%. These are the things that we really need to be considering now, because uh, we are to make sure that we are working ahead with economies that are growing at a very quick speed. At the same time, Pakistan ranks 153rd out of 156 in terms of gender inequality index of the World Economic Forum gap analysis. And I am again very, very happy to be discussing this topic, the gender equality today for a sustainable tomorrow, with a guest who I feel intellectually stimulated in the presence of Miss Sara Bilal. Sara has been a prominent voice against the violence against women in Pakistan, a proponent of the women's movement in Pakistan, AURATMARCH, and she's also the founder of Justice Project Pakistan. Sara, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me.
I know आपके साथ time निकालना आपके लिए it was a huge thing. Thank you so much. मुझे पता है बहुत मुश्किल था और मैंने आपको काफी ज्यादा तंग किया over the past couple of weeks.
No, not at all. I'm so sorry that you just caught us at a very busy time, but we were very happy to help.
I know खास तौर से औरत मार्च वाले time पे और March is especially busy with all these activities. So once again, thank you so much for being with us. Sara, I was going through your LinkedIn profile, and
I didn't even think I made my own. I haven't seen it. I think somebody in the office must have. Sorry, but yes.
but I'm impressed. so, Sarah, before starting your legal work and before starting your social work, you were working with Amar Textiles as director of operations. So, and you're now giving me that look. कि मुझे कैसे पता चल गया ये? So my question is, what made you move from the corporate side to the social work? What happened in your life that you decided I'm not going
to? I think as anybody worked in a corporate job, did understand how boring it would be. No, but actually before that, I just wanted to say that I'm not a women's rights activist, although I am a feminist. I do the work that I do, but so I'm not the best person you could have spoken to about violence against women, but we encounter it in the context of prisoners. And also AURATMARCH, where my organization, Justice Project, and us, we're just very enthusiastic participants in it. We're not a part of the organizers or anything. I wouldn't want to take the credit away for even a second from whoever the wonderful women, young women I've heard, I haven't met them actually, but
Yeah.
young women who've actually created this movement. We're just very, very, very enthusiastically happy to take part in it. But yes, so coming back to your question about um, what inspired me to do something different. I mean, really, corporate work is just not very exciting. I mean, I guess it can be when you're creating something, but most of the times, just purely making money for the sake of making money wasn't something that kind of I found fulfilling in the least, either intellectually, emotionally, spiritually, or otherwise. And so I was quite miserable. And of course, I got that job because of just pure nepotism. That was my father's created industry, and I was raised to kind of
Very
take it
honest, Sarah. I
over.
really appreciate that about you.
But it's true. It's total BS, right? So
Yeah.
it had nothing to do with me or my talents, but it did accord me an immense amount of privilege, and the ability actually to attend any educational institute. I think that's the greatest privilege, apart from many others that it bestowed on me. But it gave me the ability to go to some of the best colleges without having to be the best, really, which is also extremely unfair. Um, and so I think I enjoyed a life of the mind and using my mind so much that when I left university, when I left college, it was a real shock. And as like a typical very useless privileged child, hadn't bothered figuring out if I could get a job or how to get a job. And then I ended up in Pakistan because my parents, the one thing that they did hold for me was that they said that the day you graduate college, it's time's up. So you either get a job or you do it on your own. And I really hadn't got my act together to do it on my own. So I found myself in Pakistan working in a corporation, which was never a part of the plan. For me personally, it was always a part of my father's plan, not mine. But I had no other option. And then, I really, I just found it to be not enough at all. And
I
I think
see.
living in Pakistan, you really kind of see how unfair the entire system is, because I didn't do anything to earn this. And suddenly, there's 1,500 people or 3,000 people working in that factory, and I'm freaking 22 years old. And there's so much injustice around you. And you have so much, and there are people who have something, and then there's people who have nothing. And so if that doesn't make you question the reasons, like how unfair it is and how you are by virtue of your birth, a real a-hole for benefiting from that system, then I don't think you deserve to kind of live. So it really caused an existential crisis, which is why I tried to figure out something else to do.
I see, Sarah. But when you would have told your father, I mean, I'm just imagining the whole scenario. Na, okay, one day you would have decided I'm not going to do it anymore, and then you went up to your father and said I'm not going to do it. And we all know your father. So how did he take it? I mean, was it easy for you to
I
just
think
stand up to him?
so. It wasn't like, it's not like just like one day like in the movies, right? But it was like a winter of discontent, and my brother quit before me, so that added on more pressure on me. My brother basically turned around and said, "Yep, not for me. I like being an artist." And he had no experience as being an artist, so no one took him seriously, like not in the family. So he actually did it before me, which actually put on a lot more pressure on me, because then I couldn't quit that, right? But it didn't last long. So it was just only a couple of months afterwards where it was actually a therapist of mine, a very good therapist who's now on our board also. She was the one who said, "You're not going to survive it, and you have to kind of make your own way and figure your way out." And I had no idea about what I was going to do. So I had to think through what it was, even that, before I went to see my father, I had to come up with an alternative, right?
Mhm.
So that alternative happened because of a couple of things, but also because one of my best friends who I went to school with, like at 14 in 10th grade,
Mhm.
he had just finished law school. He'd actually topped Oxford Law as the undergraduate program. But I was speaking to him and he said, "You should be a lawyer." And I said, "There's never been a lawyer in my family, and business people hate lawyers because they think lawyers are the scum of the earth," which is fair enough. But for business, like corporate lawyers, but he said, "You're going to love it. I know you have known you since you were 16. You would love it." And I said, "Okay, well, at least I get to study and I get to use my mind. And I can't be a doctor because I can't stand blood. And I don't think I can be, like, I'm not that good at math at all. So engineering's out." But I really wanted to have a profession that actually kind of gave me a skill that I could use going forward. Like something like a carpenter, like where you know that you have a skill that you're certified in. So, it was, I guess then I went to my dad and I said, you know, "I think I want to go to law school." And he said, "That's a very pleasant thought, but I don't have to pay for your education anymore. I've paid for enough all the way till college, and you should earn something before you decide to go to law school." And I said, "Yeah, that's a really good point." So I went back and then I had to think about it again and figure it out. But my dad also, like, he doesn't like to crush dreams. He'd like to kind of challenge people, make you jump through another hoop. So then he came back to me. He's like, "That's great that you want to be a lawyer. Why don't you apply to law schools? And if you get into the top two in the world, then maybe I'll think about it." Knowing that I
Well,
did
that's
not have
incredible.
the grades, I did not have the grades to get into it, but that at least gave me an opening that I would at least start trying. And by sheer tuka, like, really, I think it was just, now I think in retrospect, it was like the universe wanted me to do death penalty work. So it kind of got me into, I didn't know about it that time, but I think it pushed me. It was by a sheer fluke that I got into a good law school. I didn't have the grades for it. It was just luck.
Luck, I see. Okay. So, yani ke phir ye tha कि you also got some support from your father, and that was like
So then he,
on a certain
then he
condition.
had to pay. Then he had to pay because we had a bet, right? So, but still, having said that, it was pretty. I mean, this is the height of privilege, right? That he gets to pay for my law school as well, right?
Mhm.
And I don't have to think about that. So,
Okay,
um,
of course. Okay. Acha, Sarah, matlab, this gives me an opportunity to talk to you about a couple of very, uh, you know, um, prominent social issues, but at the same time, definitions that we are not exactly certain about. You said that you were a feminist, but then most of the people, this term again is something that's frowned upon, and especially in a society like Pakistan. And I really like to believe that this is because not many people know what feminism really means. And at the same time, जब हम बात करते हैं gender equality की, again, not many people know what gender equality is. Women का क्या role होना चाहिए society में? We tend to keep confusing it with gender equity and a lot of other things. So again, I'm going to start with what is feminism to you, and then what is gender equality, and why is it so important for a society like Pakistan to understand what gender equality really is and then move towards it.
hmm. Okay, so I'm going to be talking not as an expert on gender equality, but just as a woman, as a Pakistani woman that lives and works here. Um, So, what is feminism to me? I mean, I went to all women's schools and then I went to an all women's college, one of the first all women's college in the United States, Smith College, which I'm extremely proud of. And, there isn't just one theory of feminism, right? There's
Mhm.
many different theories of feminism. And this is also why I love Smith more than the other all women's colleges, because it allows for a plethora of all of those feminist theories to coexist, and you can pick versus like one dominant kind of feminist theory being
Okay.
thrust down your throats. And if you look at the alumni that came out of Smith versus the other all women's colleges, you will see that diversity of the different kinds of women and different theories of feminism reflected in those alumni, rather than some other schools, mainly a rival school, which produce a certain kind of woman. So to me, feminism is really, it's as diverse as women. It's very hard and unfair, for example, for me to say, what are all men like? There's not one kind of a man. It's very different kinds of women. So kinds of men. So I think feminism is also is as different as the kind of women that is as diverse as women's experience. But broadly speaking, if we had to reduce it to just a basic single thought, it's the
Yeah.
idea that women are human beings, and as human beings they deserve equal human civil and political rights, as the rest, as everybody else on this planet.
Okay.
And I think now, as a brown woman, so as a woman of color, um, the various theories of intersectional feminism is becoming is something that I is kind of ascribe to more than other theories, which is also that feminism is not just about the fight for women and not just about our gender equality, but it's also about other movements around the world that affect the lives of women in other societies, including freedom struggles, right? And being opposed to war and being opposed to capitalist and imperialist concepts, because those economic, political, international relations theories and actions do affect women around the world. So we cannot, as a movement, we cannot exist as, in and of itself, devoid of other concerns. And this I find beautiful because I think that is very much what the experience of being a woman is about as well. It's not about having things in their own little boxes, but it's about so much more, because a lot of times women are at the center or at the core of so much of what happens in this world.
Okay, so broadly speaking, it's about according the same rights to women as you would to men in situations, and then when those
Not
rights,
all,
yeah,
not just women and men, right? Like it's all different kind of genders, and it's all kinds of people in this world. So that's what intersectional feminism is about, right? That it's about
I see,
that respect and that the access that
yeah,
for everybody in this world. That's what we fight for, is that, right, as well. And that's closely linked to feminist theories. So that's the new evolving kind of theories on feminism.
I see. Sarah, when we talk about gender equality, as I asked you, why is it so important for Pakistani people to understand what gender equality really means?
I'm not sure it's really important for our society to think of it in terms of gender equality or these terms that have been coined from outside, right? I think we need to come up with arguments, and I think people have. I think there's a lot of really prominent feminist speakers
Hmm.
and experts that do speak about it in our local context. So I think when we say gender equality, it's very easy to, people get triggered because these are very foreign sounding notions. I think we need to go back into, if we're going to talk about it in our context, we have to talk about it. If we're going to talk about it for our society, we have to talk about it in our own context. So why is gender equality important? I mean, I think if you look in Pakistan's context, and if we think about it in stages, right? So if we think about like, okay, what is the first level of demands, or the first level of justifications for why Pakistani society needs to treat its women better, right? It would just be, well, you have to have maternal health. And that only happens through education, right? Because as a country, economically and socially, we are at the brink of a disaster, which has to do with the fact that, that we have an exceptionally high level of, I've forgotten the stats on this, but the Prime Minister spoke about it in his inaugural address, of, malnourished children that are being born. And that actually means children that will have huge developmental disabilities. So our women are giving birth because of bad maternal health and bad lack of access to good maternal health. Um, Children are being born, the next generation of Pakistanis are being born that will have lower IQs, that will have learning disabilities, that will have so that is a huge impact on what our society is going to look like and what our country is going to be capable of. So, at like a very basic first crisis level, we need to make sure our women are educated. We need to make sure that our women's health is prioritized, so that they can become, healthy mothers, and we can have the next generation of Pakistanis can be healthy. So I think I choose to think about stuff in stages,
Okay.
right? And change in terms of steps and incrementally. And I think that's the way to do it, because I think if you kind of jump to the end here in Pakistan, you're not going to all you're going to get is people getting triggered and reacting. And it's not a conversation worth having, right? So you have to go in steps.
Now that you've talked about people getting triggered and all of that, uh, AURATMARCH started in 2018, and काफी सारे उसके बारे में मतलब there were people who were supporting the AURATMARCH, and then there were men who were entirely against it, and there was this whole Narabazi thing, and then it actually
Women
divided
who
the
were
people
against it.
into. Sorry.
औरतें भी उसके खिलाफ थी. It's not कि
और
सिर्फ
औरतें भी
आदमी थे,
और
थी
अभी भी
औरतें भी.
अभी
माशरे में बस इख्तिलाफ था. हाँ, right.
एग्जैक्टली बिल्कुल. सो इख्तलाफ पूरे माशरे के अंदर जो है आ गया. बट अगेन why do you think it's so important for people in Pakistan to truly understand what Aurat March really is? And then at the same time, why are the people still against it? Just as आपने
Right.
बात की
So,
feminism की,
so
I understand it's a very open sort of a topic, but at the same time, it's about respecting the boundaries. At the same time, it's about um, giving all those benefits that you would want to, not only to women, but all but to people from different segments of the society and across the globe. So to me, it seems like it sounds like a very beautiful idea, and it should be accepted at all the different levels. But again, Pakistan में क्यों इतना ज़्यादा जो है उस पे
I think
confrontation?
again, if we think about it in stages, right? I don't think it's important for people in Pakistan at the first stage to understand why it's important. I don't, I don't, I don't think so. I think at the first stage, it's important for the women to create that space and to march.
Mm-hmm.
And it's important for our daughters and it's important for other women and that conversation to happen. I think it's important for women to see that there are women marching. It's important for that. So I don't think, I disagree that the rest of Pakistani society needs to agree with it. I think every year that there is a march
Mm-hmm.
is a win itself. And,
Aspect of
of
momentum.
course, people are going to get triggered and they're going to get triggered a lot. But, at some point, there are things that we do that are for ourselves and that are for other women, which should be a precursor to before we take on the whole societal mindset. Okay, there is going to be a reaction, and obviously people are going to get triggered. But I don't think that, I think as activists and as people that want to see change, we learn this if we're smart and strategic very early on, that a part of being an activist or being an effective activist is not only about making noise and getting stuff done, but it's or having the courage to kind of step into that space, but it's also equally then becomes about learning to tune out noise, right? And understand how you're going to take what's happening around you, how much of that you're going to take in at what level, right? At a threat level, at an existential level, at an emotional level, at a spiritual level, and how you kind of filter in all of that to make your next move. So I think if we've learned a lesson, if I don't, like I said, I don't even know who the women are who run AURATMARCH, and I love that because they keep it decentralized, and that is the new way of working. It should not be like the altar of one woman or two women, and then everybody falls in line. I love that about this movement, which is why I don't know who they are, but and but I hope if they're listening that they learn. I hope that they know that it's just the fact that they have the march every single year is
We
so
have all
fundamental.
sorts of conspiracy theories on these women who are conducting this
And
Aurat
वो तो
March.
कभी वो like you can't, this is not a popularity contest, right? And it's never going to be a popularity contest. It gets you attention, but it's never going to be a popularity contest. So I think activists who go out into the field, like they understand that pretty quickly. But I think the longevity and the endurance comes from learning to be able to filter out the noise, but
Mm-hmm.
also be able to strategize around it, and then remember what it is that you're doing it for and who you're doing it for, and understand how you're going to bring that change incrementally.
Bring that change increment. अच्छा सारा वैसे मतलब in your opinion, even if you're being optimistic, how long do you think it is going to take the Aurat March to be accepted widely in Pakistan? By widely, I mean
Again,
मर्द हजरात भी
so
like 20
again,
30%
so
contributing
again,
to
I think that's the wrong framing. Amar, I'm sorry, I'm going to be the most frustrating interview you had. I did tell lawyers.
not a problem at all. I'm actually enjoying.
I disagree with the framing again, right? Because I don't think it's about acceptance within the wider society. I don't think that's where the change is going to come, right? We're so far away. Like it's not about that, right? A lot of times, if you look at history and you look in the global context and in Pakistan, right? Change comes when change makers or policy makers or people in power, right? When structures of power make a decision to change, right? Public opinion sometimes focuses or forces forces those structures of power to make that decision or to bring that change. But other times, equally, structures of power, whether it's through the courts or whether it's policymakers or whether it's to elected representatives who might not have the majority, but they bring that change. So it doesn't need to be that everybody and all the stars need to be aligned in order for that to happen. So that's why I say I don't really care about how much Aurat March is, grows in like
Popular.
or becomes accepted. Yeah.
Yeah.
It matters if it grows, it would be a huge thing, right? Like the acceptance level grows is
Hmm.
a huge, it would be important. But I don't think it's the only thing that we march for. And I don't think it's the only thing that determines its success or its effectiveness.
Okay, perfect. Because Acha Sara, I again to in the spirit of keeping the interview short, I am just coming down to my last question to you. After the last incident, which actually shook every human in Pakistan, outside Pakistan as well, the motorway incident, government became quite active. They passed a new anti-rape ordinance as well, committing harsher punishments like chemical castration and speedier trial in courts. Do you think this is enough in preventing these crimes? Because मुझे मेरे अच्छा उसमें एक पॉइंट ऑफ व्यू मेरा एक और भी है एंड दैट इज कि जो मुझे जितनी डिस्कशन मैंने लोगों से की है देयर इज अ सर्टेन ग्रुप इन द सोसाइटी who thinks के हम इससे impact नहीं create कर पा रहे because we aren't doing it publicly. And though Prime Minister has had appealed the public at large many times, but it has come out to be quite ineffectual. So अगर इसको publicly लेके जाया जाए all these punishments, so what's wrong in that? So what's your
No, I
opinion
mean,
on that?
it doesn't work. It doesn't work. It
Okay.
re-traumatizes the children in your society and adults in your society, and it doesn't make your children or your women safe, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you look at, for example, so public executions or punishments, I'll get rid of it in 2 seconds. If you look at the data surrounding countries that employ public punishment, right, like Saudi Arabia, like Iran, which are the highest in terms of public executions,
Yeah.
why are those countries after 20 years still at the top of being the highest executioners? If public executions caused a deterrent
Mm-hmm.
to those crimes, why is Saudi Arabia 40 years down the line, every year, the top 3 countries that executes? Who's committing those crimes, right? So it doesn't work. Iran executes an average of 800 to 900 people a year for drug offenses. Iran has now given up, and now they're rolling back on these punishments as well. Saudi Arabia, by the way, is also rolling back on these punishments because these countries, after decades, have realized it makes zero difference. When you look at crimes such as crimes that lead to like violence against women or sexual offenses against children, these are not premeditated crimes. These are not crimes about the offenses themselves, but these are crimes that are committed by people that in large degree, either in the case of child sexual offenders, have been victims of abuse themselves, in which case a deterrent or or have a chemical imbalance, the deterrent is not going to make a difference. Or in the cases of violence against women, it's about much more than the sexual need to attack those women. It's about power. It's about exerting your power. It's about punishing. It's about violence, right? So, so they're very seldom like premeditated crimes. And so deterrence, public executions does not cause a deterrence. Now, if you look at the experts, you look at child rights experts, right? They have talked about this, the legislation against to curb child sexual abuse and stuff. Everybody, and this is the laziest approach that anybody can have. Yes, we all want to make our children safer, but then let's look at what the experts in our country are saying about how to make the children safer. वो बात कोई करना नहीं चाहता. Everybody just wants. And in that case, what I say to the people that are self-proclaimed activists on behalf of children, right, on Facebook or whatever, इनको harsher punishment. So I don't think you're any different than the child sexual abusers because you are not interested in solving the problem.
Mm-hmm.
You are also just interested with the bloodlust of seeing someone hang. You're not listening. The day after they hung Zainab's killer, right, which 4 महीने में उसकी सुप्रीम कोर्ट से भी फैसला हो गया, पब्लिसाइज्ड, इससे ज्यादा पब्लिसाइज्ड तो किसी बंदे की पनिशमेंट या हैंगिंग हो ही नहीं सकती. अगले दिन Peshawar में एक और बच्ची का रेप हुआ, वो मरी, right? So and now we have 2 years of information since hanging that person, right? Now are we ready to have a conversation about what actually needs to happen, right? There are child prevention mechanisms, profiling, policing, education. By education, I don't mean like, educate every child, but like, you know, actually looking at what's causing this to happen, looking at the facts that most children are abused by people they know in their family. They're not abused by some random dude on the street,
Exactly.
right?
Very good.
If you're not looking at making those interventions, you are not interested in solving this problem because the data is overwhelming. And the advice, and the same goes with violence against women, right? It's the same exact thing. You want a quick fix, and it's not going to be a quick fix. You can keep doing this for decades more and won't make a drop.
बिल्कुल सही, बिल्कुल सही. Thank you so much, Sarah. I didn't get a chance to speak to you for longer. मुझे थोड़ा सा I had a couple of more questions, but again, this meeting is also ending. So thank you very much for taking time out, being very, very generous with your time, and quite pleasant to have your take on the women matters, because you deal with the justice system, with the torture in the society, with what leads to it and how it's being dealt. And then again, getting your perspective in terms of how women are managing and trying to make sure that they also have a say, and which is quite important right now, because I mean, we, as I mentioned in the beginning of the interview, that if we have to go alongside the developing countries in the world, we need to make sure we are capitalizing on the entire population, and women are actually half of it. So again, thank you very much, and again to my
We give
audience.
birth to it.
Sorry.
We give birth to I said, and we give birth to it. So
Oh
it's
yes.
really important that you take care of us if you want a good society going forward, a healthy, like, not malnourished, society with learning disabilities. You have to prioritize us in our care.
100% correct. Indeed. Bilkul. So once again, thank you so much for being with us, Sarah. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us today. We're inshallah going to be seeing you next week with another interview, pretty much on the same lines with UN Women's theme this year: gender equality today for a sustainable tomorrow. Take care of yourselves. Allah Hafiz.
Thank you.